going to take a brief pause now from focusing on the models and address a very important question that has a through line with both of the models I have addressed so far. And this question is God good? Well, it depends on how you define good, because Model 1 would define God's goodness as being God is powerful, God is in control, God is sovereign, and God is in charge. In contrast, Model 2 would define God's goodness as love, kindness, being attentive, caring about the development of humans, and desiring for humans to make the best choices for themselves and for the world around them. So a question might arise of where do these models get their information from? It's an epistemological question of how do they know what they say that they know? Well, one way that we can explain the sources from which these different theological models gain their information is through a theological tool called the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. Developed by John Wesley, who is the founder of the United Methodist denomination, we see the Wesleyan Quadrilateral as representing 4 sources of information for our faith. These 4 sources are experience, reason, tradition, and scripture. So through that lens of the Wesleyan Quadrilateral and those 4 sources of information, we can see that Model 1 gains its information from scripture and from tradition, whereas Model 2 gains its information from experience and from reason. This is a big part of why we see such a contrast between Model 1 and Model 2, and we will continue to see similarities and differences with the following models, but understanding that how we are informed about God and how we are informed about our faith and what sources we draw on most heavily, that will definitely shape our theodicy, our theology, how we understand and relate to God. And so I encourage you to consider what sources of information do you lean on more heavily to inform your faith? Is it scripture, reason, tradition, experience, or some combination of the 4? Consider that as we move forward, and consider how you would define God's goodness. And use that as a sort of measuring stick as we continue to examine these models of theodicy and try to reconcile human suffering with a good and loving God.